if you've ever seen my table, most of my animals are realistic. So I have a hard time doing anything but realistic, so that's why they asked me to do this. I have a little PowerPoint presentation. Again, the first subject, or the first question you ask yourself is, what do I carve? And there are so many subjects to pull from. You have the big animals, small animals. It really doesn't matter what they are. It's just a matter of what are you interested in. You can see them online. You can see them in magazines. You can see at the zoo, natural history, taxidermist piece, something like that. Any one of those would work. But something will inspire you. Something you'll be seeing at the photos of all the ones you're looking at. Something will say, you know, I've got to turn that into a three-dimensional carving. The inspiration could be just a striking pose, something where the animal is alert, it's stationary. Maybe it's the coloring in the background. If you pay attention to some of these animals, you may actually see my inspiration for the final pictures on this slideshow. So this is not a test. I'm not going to have you remember which one they are, but at least keep that in mind. The other thing you can find too, maybe it's not a striking pose, but it's something showing action. You know, extreme fluctuation emotions, agitation, aggressiveness might be something you want to capture, that action of that animal, interaction with another animal or with something else, in which case that might be the inspiring situation. And again, you may see it on Nature, on PBS. You may see it somewhere else and you go, wow, that's really what I want to try and capture. And then you have your work cut out for you, because then you have to actually go find resources. It might also simply be a characteristic, whether it's something like a flowing mane or fur, texture in the wind, or whether it's a quiet moment between two animals, a mother and a fawn, or a mother and a cub. In which case, those might be something. In the case of, and I'll give you a hint here, in the case of the lion down there, it was the folds of his skin on his rear leg. That would actually interest me in seeing those wrinkles. I don't do a lot of people, but maybe I get into the wrinkles on animals rather than their faces. So that might be something also. Or it could be a unique piece of wood. Several times I've run across a piece of wood that simply desired to be something. Whether that be a piece of mulberry that became a giraffe, a piece of cherry that became a macaw. That actually large piece is a section of a large stump, the one on the right-hand side, that stood 7 feet tall, but had some knobs sticking out of it, which became a bear on one side and an Indian head on the other. I do occasionally people when I have to. The biggest thing to remember is there are universal similarities between animals. You're not having to, every time you change an animal, you're not having to completely reinvent the wheel. You want to know those key marked sections, like the demarcation, the dent behind the front leg and in front of the back leg that defines the middle or the belly area. If you always get that in there, I don't care how hairy the animal is, there's going to be some indication of that. It may not be as strident as it would be, say, on a horse or some starving animal that you see on the web or something like that, but it's going to be something that will give you an indication of where the front leg and the shoulder blade is and the rear hip area and rump area. So you look for those in everything. And I was going to make this a test. This was going to be a test to identify them. And some of them you can identify. The giraffe, of course, number 2 is very noticeable because of the sloping shoulders. And of course, the rhino, number 8, is always identifiable because of the overlapping skin. But some of the other ones you probably could identify. Let's see how right you were. There's those. Again, a jaguar, any cat. It could have been, if you'd come up with a lion or a leopard, you were in the family. You were good. The cow, again, they kind of have a little hint of the udder, so that kind of gave it away a little bit. The squirrel, kind of looks like a cat too, but again, it would depend on the width. The other proportion you would see as to whether it would be one or not. Jackals, dog-like, any kind of canine would be very similar to that. So wild boar, I wouldn't have guessed, but then I'm not studying wild boar, but I might if I knew what wild boar looked like. There's also similarity in leg structure. The biggest similarity is we have the same joints as they do. They just happen to stand on their toes, and we stand on the flat of our feet. So the heel bone on us is the hock bone on them. And so those joints are the same. They bend the same direction on every animal. Now, they have much shorter bones in the arm from here to here, so that elbow is up within their body range instead of ours. They also have the ribcage shape and the shoulder blade that pulls forward, so again, that's something to look for. But other than the fact that we don't walk on our tiptoes, unless you're a ballerina, that muscle structure and bone structure is very similar. All you have to do is translate it. This is kind of an example of the different parts of the leg. And you can see the one difference comes to do with the difference in the length of the bone between one joint and the other. On a camel, you have C, D, and F, E, which are one distance, and on an elephant, they're all squished together down at the bottom. They all move the same way, they all bend the same way, they just are all confined to one little spot. But notice how tall from A to C on the camel is and how long it is from the elephant. So those are differences you look for too, because that will make a difference on when the animal looks right. You can see down in the right-hand corner, there's a scale that this particular author did, which actually shows the location of the knee joints depending on the animal. And of course, the smaller the animal on the scale, the lower they are to the ground, as well as then there are certain ones that fall either below or above the midline of the leg. So you can use that as a guide too. This is the rear leg conformation, and it's the same thing. We all share the same principle of joinery, in which case then all it is changing the length of the bone. Any questions so far? Okay, good. I've got you mesmerized. Universal truths. These are key things that you can use because every animal has them and you don't have to reinvent everything. There are no football-shaped eyes. I do not know how many eyeballs I've seen that are football-shaped eyes. They are not. The eyeball varies according to the shape of the bone. And the eyeball goes in, make sure I got it the right way. The eyeball goes in here and spreads the lids. So you can have it straight across, tilted a little, you have a wolf. Same principles. Animals that have their eyes out protruding so they can see behind them are more round, and ones that are actually more sleepy or whatever are less visible. This is a good example, and of course I can move them around and look at you. And of course you can see they're shaped, somewhat, but it's not going to be exactly centered from here to here like a football would be. This would be off center a little bit, one way or the other. So choose which areas and study the eye to get it right. The other universal truth is eyes of predators are more forward-facing than prey. The prey needs to see what's following behind him, and the predator only needs to know what's ahead of the chase and eat. So the predators have a forward-facing eye. They are not straightforward, and neither are ours. If you carve any faces, they're not actually straightforward. They're actually kind of a slant. But as long as they're mostly forward and not back here, they'll actually read right. I tried to get all of these as profiles, so you're matching everything with everything. The other thing is the ears. Ears are attached to the side of the head. I don't know how many carvings I've seen when they're up here. They actually come down the side. They may have an attachment close to the top of the head, but they do come to the side. And people say, well, that's such a complex shape. Well, it is, except you change it to something basic. My favorite way of doing it is toilet paper rolls. It's actually a good way to do a test to see what will work. Now, if I want to shape it, I'm going to have a little bit of curve there. It's pointed. And this is a good example. I'm going to toss this to the audience so you can pass it around. Good workers will know what these are. These little items here are Craig plugs, and you plug them to hide the screw. They're essentially ear-shaped. So this is what you can do with them. So I'm going to toss these out. Who wants to catch? Got it? Good job. Another one with the ears. Oh, those are harder because they're in plastic bags. I'll throw another one. Who else wants one? Oh, well, it's close. They're durable, let's put it that way. But they do change shape. So you can have, if you have longer ears, just use a paper towel roll. And people say, well, I have a dog that has fold ears.
Yep.
That's what they are. If you pick up the dog's ears, and you see that on YouTube videos where they'll put basset hound ears, they're still this shape. They just roll down like that and fold because they are too heavy to hold on their own. They don't have enough cartilage. So you can use that as an example. I often use a piece of leather to actually post that onto the shape to see how it folds and how it bends so that I can actually replicate it, should I not have any decent photos to go by. And that's easy to do. No reason why you can't make a model. The nostrils are based on the comma shape. The upper right-hand corner are nostrils. So if you looked up somebody's nose, like the dentist does every time he does your teeth, you would see that it's a comma shape for the nostril. And all animals have the same thing. Some are small, some have long tails on them, some have large circles and very short, but they all are based on that. And you can use that as a guide for whatever the animal is. You know that it's just a simple shape. Also, animal bodies are deeper than they are wide. You see the upper one, we have a horse and we have a lion. And the horse is definitely much wider in the back end. Most of the prey animals that run do. They have much more massive motors that actually compel them forward, whereas the predators don't necessarily have as much width. But they are similar in line or a little bit larger in the back end. And that makes a big difference when you're carving too, because if you do it the other way, you are doing a man-made exception called a bulldog, which has been bred for massive shoulders like that and very small hips, which do make it difficult for having puppies. It's an issue. That dog would not exist without mankind's intervention. After you know the similarities, the next thing you're looking for is differences. All of you probably have, well, maybe not all of you, know what I mean? If you have a dog at home, you have all of the basic information to do a wolf or a fox, whatever canine is out there, because the same structure and joints are the same. It's just the differences between the body style. The most difference you have on there is basically a little corgi, because he has very short legs, but the joints are all there. They just happen to be all short and similar size. Whereas some of the dogs, like the husky, is actually closer to the wolf. It's actually a closer relative of the wolf, and so his body type is very similar. But if you were to do a husky versus a wolf, you can see the differences are there. Husky has a curled tail. Wolf maybe has it arched, but he never has it curled over his back. The other dog, I can't remember exactly what that breed is more wolf-like, and he's probably a Siberian type dog, and so he has very much close relative of the wolf. So he matches more completely, though not as much bulk to the body, because he was bred by man to do something else other than run down game. In the case of the bear, you have a basic bear body. And of course, other than size changes, you can see that there are differences in the location of the brow, what shape it is, how angled it is, whether it changes angle from the forehead to the nose, or whether it's all in line. Polar bears, for their very reason, have to be streamlined because they swim. They cannot have a brow that sticks up like a grizzly bear because they wouldn't actually be able to swim very fast. So Mother Nature has automatically streamlined them, because the ones that were like grizzlies that tried to swim died because they couldn't catch the seal. And so the only ones left were the ones streamlined. So Mother Nature did a good job there. But you can see there is slight differences between each of the bears, not just their size, but also their overall bulk, shape, whether they have a hump on the shoulder or whether they don't, the size of and hump on the back, where it's located. On a black bear, it's farther back. On a grizzly, it's about the same way, but on a brown bear, it's a little bit farther forward. So if you want to actually delineate between one bear and the other, you need to look for those differences between one bear and the other, because that will make a difference on whether someone can recognize it instantly as a polar bear or instantly as a grizzly bear. The other thing that cover is looking for good reference. I don't know how many people say, I want to carve this, and I have a postage stamp reference photo. And I'm like going, do you know what the butt end of that animal looks like? And they go, do I have to know that? Well, you're carving in 3D. Unless you're doing a relief carving, you probably need to know the width of the animal, and all that other information. So the first photo on the left here is the basic reference, and on that I can pull two basic references off of that. One's from the main animal that the photographer was actually aiming at, and the second one is the background animal that the photographer probably hoped was out of the picture. But because it shows the back of the head, it gives me a really good view of that mane and where it starts and stops, which would normally be covered by the ears. The second reference gives me good profile of the head, but since the body is partially turned, it doesn't give me a good reference. It would be short-bodied if I tried to transfer that. So the head works really good. And then, of course, I have that bonus picture of the youngster who's facing right at the camera, so I know exactly where the ears are attached on the side of his head and exactly the distance between his horns. So that's a good photo. I hold on to that one. The one that's in shadow or whatever, it slows. So there'll be some photo reference you can hold on to because it has good information, and the rest you could actually crop out what you don't want and throw it away because it takes up less space. I usually actually put all my related animals into one of those sleeves, so that way it doesn't matter whether it's this big or whether it's this big, it fits in the sleeve and it's all rated on animal, and then it goes in a file cabinet. That way now I know exactly where it is. That is if I put it away the last time. I have had to look through the entire house. Now you can look and see all those animals that I had referenced on there and where I actually pulled some of the reference. The wolf was actually the photo of the wolf. I only had the front half of him, so I had to make up the rest of him. The images of action would be the deer, and of course then reference for the grizzly bear. Do we have any questions? Okay. Well, that ends the PowerPoint, and then we'll plug the camera back in. So give us a moment for the view setup. Yeah, that's like, I can see it here, and you can see it there. Okay. All right. Good. That's the important thing. Now, people a lot ask, mostly what I use is a Fordham because of its torque and the ability I can take very, very large bits in it. And when I'm working on carvings that are medium-sized or even small, I like to be able to rough them out rather quickly. All the time people say, I'm an impatient carver. I want it gone, I want it gone now. Especially if I know what I need to remove. Clean some stuff up so you can actually see what I'm doing. Get the toilet paper rolls out of the way. Take them back to the cat so they can play with them. I have three now. Two of them are youngsters, and one of them is old, which doesn't want to have anything to do with the young ones. So it's a major battle all the time. Just a note on safety, leather glove. Not a carving glove, you just want a leather one because when I'm using this back one, I keep moving around on it. Hold still, hold still. For this one, I want to make sure that my hand survives the carving section. And these go through skin and flesh and bone just as readily as they go through basswood, walnut, cherry, whatever. So you want to be careful with those. The other thing you want to do is you're throwing a lot of dust directly at you, so you always want a dust mask. A note on that, any dust mask works as long as you shape it to your nose. So most times your thumb is as big as the bridge of your nose. I use that to roll this over top and then flare it out for my cheeks. And then I can put it on and not steam up my glasses. If it doesn't fit right and you're getting air and you're steaming up your glasses, it means probably there's an air gap and you need to adjust that. Now, I'm not going to use that because if I put on my mask, I will not be able to talk to you. So we will do a little bit of carving, but not a lot. Dust skin. I have a number of carving hand pieces. I kind of believe in the Norm Abrams thing. You don't change router bits, you change routers. So I have a fair number of them I can pull from without having to do anything like changing cards or changing. So it's like that. Okay, the example I did how many people were here yesterday for the talk? Okay, good. So the example yesterday, since I still have it here, was the bear and the hare. And we're going to kind of do the basic shapes since this is a relief carving, but it still follows the same principles of the tuck in behind the front leg and front of the back leg. We'll do the same thing on another leg, going the other direction. we found it. This lighting is wonderful for that. But seeing the key, first time. I need to buy a lottery ticket. When it goes in the first time, it's really lucky. Okay, so you have, so we pointed out that there is a curve here, and there's a curve here, and the first thing I need to do is identify which leg I'm keeping and which leg I'm not keeping. If I don't, I'll be in big trouble. In this case, I know the key usually puts the back legs together and the front legs separated, because that means this one and this one, opposite ones, are going to be forward, and that means the opposite ones from each other are going to be back. And that's something to look at. What was his name? The guy that did Animals in Motion. He did photographs. This was back in the 1800s. And to prove a bet, he actually photographed a horse running, because everyone at that time thought that the horse flew across the ground and didn't touch the ground. And he proved with his photographs that yes, there is a one position where they are all off the ground, but it's when they're tucked, not when they're out. When they're outstretched, there's always 1 foot on the ground before the next one hits. And he won the bet, because he took those photos. And then that got him started. Now this was early history of photography. So if he had 100 shots, that was 100 cameras set up. And as the animal went past, it hit a signal that actually flipped them all off. Now I am surprised someone hasn't actually done a more digital one with more information, because some of these are hard to read, but they still are a good reference to know exactly what the gait is at a particular motion, so that you don't end up with a, let's see, I did a draft horse one time, didn't take off the wrong legs, I ended up with a pacing draft horse. There are no pacing draft horses. That's only a standard bred that paces. So at that point, no one noticed. The person who bought it didn't notice, so they just wanted the draft horse. So I was lucky, but someone could have come up and pointed that out to me, and I was very glad they didn't. So then we'll do the point back here around the belly. So I know that this one's forward, and these are back. You also have a place behind the jaw that tucks in where the neck is, and a little bit of place on the shoulder. So those are good indicators I start with. First thing we do is we're going to remove some of that excess material of the back legs. So, of course, that was turned on. Foredoms are nice because they are set up so lefties can use them as well, at least on the rotary burrs. That means, though, for right-handed people, I have to actually look and pay attention to make sure I'm going the forward motion. The forward motion is going to be the way, if you're right-handed, it's going to be turning so that the rotation is pulling the tool away from you. That way you aren't having to push it away from you as it tries to walk toward you. For left-handed people, it would be in reverse, because then it's doing the same thing and you have more control over it. If you've ever tried to stop a horse by pushing it away, that doesn't work. You want to pull back, and that's what you're doing, is you're pulling against the rotation. So it means that you can start by making a groove, and that's a stop cut. So all of us carvers that know how to use knives know what a stop cut is. And essentially it's bigger, so it's what's called a moat. And then I turn it around so I can get to this other direction. And I cut a little bit forward of the leg, because of course all legs are roundish. And I can go a little bit on the back. Then I'll do separate this one from his belly. Did it just go on? Oh, there it is. Hold on a second. I think I am sitting on the on-off switch. Okay. If the mic goes out, let me know, because I probably turned it off accidentally. Out. It is a sharp demarcation behind the leg, but it's a softer angle in the ribs. And that has to do with the way the animal moves. If it was a sharp edge, his front leg would run into his belly and he wouldn't be able to go very well. The legs actually move over the belly area, not into it, so. Okay. Now we'll do under his jaw here. And some of his shoulder, part of his neck. Okay, now we'll do this step. This nose got kind of twisted a little bit when I cut it, but that's okay. We'll make it do. And then I will sometimes do in front of the ear, because the head tips in front and comes out. There's actually a forehead and then an angle of the head that goes in front of the ear, and that's why you can see the side of the ear attached to the side of the head, because of that shape right here. And you can also go behind the ear a little to form it sticking out, because the neck always goes into the head, even though it might be wide back at the shoulder. Now I've essentially roughed out the basic information of all the reference points so that I don't carve them off or put them in the wrong spot. Now you can begin to just round the bear. On a full-size model, if I was doing it, I'd draw a center line down the back. So like if this was a full-size bear, I'd draw a center line along this so that I didn't take off too much on one side or the other. It's more or less you want to keep it symmetrical. And power tools make it fast, but also make it fast to make a mistake. So now I'll do a little rounding again. Right behind the shoulder is deeper, and it flares out to where the hip is. And then also narrows down here. And then you can do a little bit of rounding from the hip back to his tailbone. But it's not going to be as angled a cut. It's just going to be rounding that corner, like using a roundover bit rather than actually going in and cutting away a lot of material like you did on the top. So now I'm going to add the eye. And the eye basically, since he's a predator, keeps me slightly forward facing, but I don't want to cut off the brow. So I'll just go in there and give the indication of that. Now you have it basically roughed out with all the main key things, and now you can go into details. So you would rough, if it was in the round, you'd do more fine-tuning of the front muscle and making sure it's tapered and all that kind of stuff, because bears are narrower in the front than they are in the back end, partly because of the hair, but also because of the hip. You round the legs over. Again, the back leg tapers to the hock area, so this part behind the bear leg down here is going to cut in, as do most animals, whether it's dog, cat, squirrel, bunny. It's going to round in like that, because this then becomes the hock bone, that little round thing, which actually goes over that. They walk on their heels, so this is the hock, and of course normally they walk flat-footed, so this is the hock. So they are like us. They're much more like us than the other animals. Now, the next thing I go in, any questions before I go any further? Doing okay? All right, haven't lost anybody yet. Now you would do, finish your shaping and everything, and the next thing I'll do, because it's probably the most question I get, is how do you get the hair on there? And when Fox Chapel contacted me doing the bear head, they said, oh, but that's going to be so hard to do within the time frame because of all that hair. And I said, I hate to let you in on a surprise, but I saved that to last because it takes the least amount of time. And I really hate to give away my secret, but if you really want me to, I will. The secret of doing hair is this cutter. Or any cutter, cylinder-wise. I just happen to have a 1/4 inch shank, but 1/8 inch shank, 3/30 shank. It has no teeth on the end, so that essentially there's no cutting in there. And if you have one, like Dremel makes one with their cross teeth on the end, you just grind them off on a diamond. So you basically have what's called a dead end cutter. I like the fluted one because it does a little bit better, smoother, but I'm actually using it like a V-tool. So this tool is actually used on edge, just like you would use a V-tool in a carving kit to do all the hair. But the advantage of this is you can go over what you've already cut. Whereas when you use a V-tool with a hand tool, it's very hard to go across what you've already cut. And so you can't get a realistic overlapping of the hair links. So everyone know what this is. This is a tungsten carbide burr. This one you also want to wear a glove on because it cuts very nicely in the wood. Cuts very nicely in the flesh or something, so it makes it easier to find it. Yes, got it. Okay, another lottery ticket. So, to start off with, because you can get a little carried away, is I draw some hair direction, and you can see as it turns direction as it goes down the leg. It then goes like this. It actually goes straight on the back. A lot of people make the mistake of parting it in the back. The only animal that I know of that has a part in the back is a Yorkie, and that's man-made. And you just want to follow down, and that just gives me some indications of where it is so that I don't accidentally turn it upside down and go crosswise. All right, here we go. You want to do a series of S curves and C curves, backward like parentheses, and you want to move both hands. I am somewhat limited by the cable on this hand, so I cannot move it as much as all the way around. So this hand has to take up the slack to be able to move it back and forth. So more or less I found that just thinking, without thinking what this hand's doing, try and make it so that it keeps it on point. Because if you turn it sideways, you get a nice groove, but that's not hair. You want the point. So you have to actually move it so that point, that edge, is always orientated in that direction. So a little ambidextrous will help. And the more you do it, the more you go over, you should have no flat spots left over, the better it looks. Most people say, well, it looks good all by itself right now. It looks better when you do more. You shouldn't have any flat areas at all. And again, sometimes you'll push in deep and sometimes shallow. The idea is randomness. Now we're going to do a change of direction. And I want to cross over what I already did because I don't want them all parallel. Change your direction. I always work towards an in or an edge because otherwise the tool will roll over the edge and you'll get to use your glove. And you notice I kind of let the tool ride on the wood even when it's going backwards. It's a little easier on the tool motor if you're not ramping it up and keep going down like this. Now you don't really hear it on the boredom because it's got enough power behind it to take it, but if you're doing this on a Dremel, it'll actually ramp it up and ramp it down and ramp it up and ramp it down. And that shortens the life of the motor. So I pull forward deeply and then let it roll back in the same groove and then change my direction and go another way. Then the motor's working under the same torque. This is the tedious stuff. Can you imagine doing an entire reindeer? Okay. Good enough, I'm done. As far as I want to go. Now, you can see that's a pretty fuzzy looking bear. And so I've seen some people where they just slap paint on it and go with that. Ooh, no, don't do that. One, because the crisp lines in the bottom are nice, but they're too crisp on top. So what you want to do is you round the motor to look like hair. So then I switch over to this. This is essentially a very coarse Scotch-Brite pad. It It is essentially stiffer than the ones they sell at Woodcraft, so I don't buy them at Woodcraft. I'm going to toss. You want to feel them? That one flies better. Good catch. They actually are sold in automotive for body work. So those are the ones you want to get. I know one of the vendors had some. I'm not sure which one. I have to go look. But they had them, and you just cut them into squares. They eventually round themselves. I didn't cut them round, or cut them square. And under use, like yesterday, I rounded it off. So you simply change your tool. We got a nice lesson on changing hand pieces. And that's not it. Oh well, I lost my lottery ticket. That's it. The other way to test it is just to slowly give it a little power, and if it rattles, then it's not working. Okay. Now what we're going to do, and I won't talk during this because I have to hold my breath, these throw little things off at you, so you want to wear glasses. If you don't wear glasses or contacts, take them off, wear a face shield, safety glasses, whatever it is, because you don't want these little things in your eyeballs. You ready? Okay. I do it at high speed, and there we go. Now we can see what it looks like. We've rounded the top of the points off so they have more of a mounding of hair hanks. And you still have the depth, and you've gotten the fuzz that was formed by the tool in there. And you just need to keep going. So these lines here are more parallel, so I go over those to break up the parallelness. I don't want them to look like they were all done in a line. A lot of people start and they do wink, 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 and basically don't go over them. And then it looks like you've dipped your bear in oil. And so it's like, wait a minute, or porcupine. It's a porcupine. But this then solves the problem of that, takes it off, smooths it up. And if you find now, you can do it again. So if I find there's some parallel lines I don't like, I can go in and carve them off. So I could go in and say, I want a little bit more, get rid of that parallel. How to fight with your Fordham 101. All right. Now those were parallel, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change direction because I can use the radius of this tool to give me a more radius for that swing around. So, do change direction because it might be that it's easier to achieve the look you're after going at it from another direction. Hard to actually see what I'm doing. The lighting's wonderful for the camera, but I cannot see what I'm doing up here at the table. I did go back and get rid of some of those blocks. Yes, you do not want to use Kevlar bars, particularly with the tungsten carbide burrs, or you'll be chasing your tool across the thing to the end of the extension cord. These actually are like copper burrs, and so your Kevlar glove will actually knit, or any knit glove, will catch it, pull the tool, break the shaft. We sell them at Woodcraft for $40. And we have had people come in because they also work like this. Carvers who transfer from carving with a knife, carving with power, have a tendency to sit back and carve. I usually suggest buying a leather apron as well, because it only takes 1 or 2 times to catch your t-shirt or your whatever you're wearing, and you'll snag it, it'll tear the t-shirt, it'll break the cable inside the sheath, and you'll be out $40 for every cable, as well as down for carving time. So if you regularly like to sit back, I like to work forward, if anything, on my knees when I'm roughing it out, so I have my elbows on my knees. It controls the action, so the arm cannot be pulled away like this because I'm braced. Now on the table it's a little harder. It's nice to have elbow pads so you're not actually wearing your elbows, but it also limits your action. You cannot be pulled any farther than that, and you cannot be pulled any farther than this. So it means that you have much more control over the carving tool from getting carried away and running away from you. But definitely invest in just a leather glove. I don't care whether it has Kevlar on the back. Well, actually I do. You don't want Kevlar on the back either, because if it rolls over the edge and catches on this side, you'll be out another cable. So buy the cheapest leather gloves. These are like $5 a pair at the local garden or woodworking place, Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, something like that. And get them so they fit fairly comfortably. This is just about ready to be replaced because though the leather holds up, the stitches don't. So eventually there'll be a point where the tool can get in there and bite you even though you've got a leather glove on. So you want to make sure that you eventually replace them. Or if you're handy with the sewing machine, you could restitch them. I'm not handy and it's not worth the effort just to buy another pair of gloves. I have tons of right-hand gloves left over because the only ones I use are the ones on my left hand. Okay, we'll switch over and defuzz. So save the Kevlar for the edges. Edge tools work good with Kevlar. There, cut it. And you really don't need to. I like to wear a glove anyway. This one will just sand your skin off. So you get same with diamonds. You'll get a rug burn, but of course that's your fault for holding it. You're actually So how's that look on the screen and monitor? Okay? So again, bears are kind of coarsely fuzzed, and one of the questions, well, do I do a wood burner and go in there? Yeah, so there are places like you want to add hair behind the ruff, but you can't get your tool in no matter how small it is. The rotary tool won't go in there without catching one side. So those would be times you go with the wood burner and you actually add a little bit of hair there. You could add some fine hair on top of these essential hanks of hair on top. You could go in and do the fine muzzle hair. And again, that's very, very fine and very, very short, so it doesn't show up as much. You wouldn't have to, but you could also do it with this. Just do very, very light cuts. That's where a raking light would come in handy. The bear is kind of easy because I can really go at it and it's all going to look like a bear. But if I was doing finer one, I want to have a raking light so I can actually see how deep I'm going. Bird carvers use it a lot when they're actually stoning feathers, because if you don't have raking light, you actually make them too deep. You're really only wanting them very light, so the raking light tells you how deep you've gone. And if you don't have that, then you may find that when you paint them, it looks like you actually go like this with all the feathers, and you don't want to do that. Any questions? You still doing okay? Yes? Yep, the manes of horses. Now they have smooth bodies, so essentially usually only this is used on their mane and tail. I might stone some if say it's a pony in winter coat or something like that. Then there might be some places on the horse that dictates that they be a little heavier fur, in which case then I would want to maybe stone them so that they have a softer look to them than wood burn. I usually wood burn the differential between the mouth because that's a hard end, and I started wood burning the eye. I would go in and it's just shading the eye. I get it shaped with my tools, but I'll go in there and I'll actually, with the flat of the tool, just kind of round it over because I found it melts the wood and makes it shinier. So that when you paint it, it looks more like an eyeball even though it's not glass. It has a different texture than if you had the kind of texture of the wood on there. It no longer has the texture of the wood, it's now been melted together. So it makes a good eye. Whether you paint it over and turn it into a red eye, instead of a black eye, that's fine. But it does seem to make it a little bit easier when you're painting it to show as a different material than fur. Yes? Yes, I wear them. Now, I'm not wearing it here because I'm going to be able to talk to you. But I normally wear a mask, and I'm an air filtration system I sit in front. Now, the air filtration system I have is 750 CFM. It's meant for a workshop as an ambient air cleaner, but I sit within the distance of this table from it. So I can lift up dust like this and see it go. And that's nice because I also have a computer sitting behind me. So even though it's in a cupboard, we got to keep it clean. So we need to let it survive for another 10 years, I believe. But that would be the other thing. You also want to clean for the rest of your family. You don't want to put it in the air and then have to be picked up with a cold air return and thrown into the rest of the room. So the same reason the air filtration system is used in a workshop to keep the dust down in the rest of the house, it's also used in the carving area. Now there are some small ones that work really nicely. I've made I didn't bring it, but I made a generic one with a bucket. And that basically does a nice job of picking up when I'm doing demos. It kind of allows it to pull it this way instead of having it all over and billowing out. And that might work. On the other hand, there's some nice ones that are made for tabletop ones. I used one for Fox Chapel. I can't remember, Hercules or Hurricane, I think it was. And I was absolutely amazed because you could see in the bear carving article, I was carving and you could actually see the dust in the camera fly this way. And that was because the air filtration was off camera and it was just going right there. Now, it worked even better after I cleaned it. We took a break and I thought, this has got a lot of stuff on the front. So I undid the clips while they all went to lunch. I took it out in the parking lot and beat it out. It hadn't been cleaned for several projects because I wasn't working on walnut. And there was walnut dust in there. So I don't know what the previous project was that they were working on, but it was dirty. So it worked even better after I cleaned it and put it back together. So if you don't have room, maybe something like that would work. You don't have room for, my air filtration system is probably this long, by this deep, by this high. And not everyone has room to sit in front of something like that. Okay, so maybe that would be something to look into if you got into it, is to have some way of picking up and controlling the dust. So you can see how much it ended up just on the desk here. So, any other questions? They gave me my time, and it takes me a long time to pack up. So if you don't have any questions, we're done. Thank you. If you think of a question later, I'm over in the booth with the reindeer and the sleigh. So you can ask those questions then.